Welcome to this explainer. Have you ever stood in front of a monumental, ancient text and just felt, well, completely overwhelmed? You look at those pages and your brain immediately jumps to the conclusion that there is this insurmountable mountain of vocabulary standing between you and actual comprehension. It really feels like you'd need to spend years, maybe even decades, just memorizing words before you could even begin to understand what you're reading. But what if that mountain is actually a molehill? Today we're looking at some absolutely fascinating data that completely flips the script on how we approach this text.
Okay, let's dive into this. I want you to take a second and actually guess the sheer volume of unique vocabulary you assume is required to unlock this text. Think about it. The thousands of pages, the complex themes, the incredible historical depth. Are you guessing you need a vocabulary of 10,000 words? Maybe 20,000? Look, it's total human nature to look at a massive text and assume a 1-to-1 ratio of complexity. We think big book, giant vocabulary, right? Well, keep that number you just guessed in your head. Hold on to it tight. Because we're about to look at the actual linguistic master key to this text, and the reality is going to shatter that assumption completely.
125. Seriously, I'll give you a moment to let that sink in. 125. That is not a typo, and no, we haven't missed a few zeros. This shockingly low number is literally your first linguistic master key. When we talk about unlocking a colossal text, the data reveals that you absolutely do not need a massive encyclopedia vocabulary to get your foot in the door. You just need exactly 125 core words. Think about how entirely achievable that is. You could jot those down on a few flashcards. You could honestly learn them over a single weekend if you were dedicated enough. But why do these specific 125 words matter so much?
Because those 125 unique words result in over 40,000 occurrences within the text. The scale contrast here is just incredible. On one side, you have this tiny input of just 125 words. On the other, an enormous output of more than 40,000 repetitions. What this means is that as you read through the pages, you aren't constantly getting hit with new, unknown vocabulary. Instead, you're seeing the exact same foundational building blocks used over and over and over again. The repetition is extraordinary. This tiny cluster of words forms the absolute structural backbone of the entire volume.
And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate linguistic 80-20 rule. Or actually, scratch that, it's more like the 199 rule. In linguistics, a small percentage of a language often makes up the vast majority of everyday communication, but seeing it quantified to this extreme degree in an ancient text is truly remarkable. You aren't just learning 125 random words, you're acquiring the absolute highest leverage linguistic tools available for this specific text. For every single word you learn in this core group, you're effectively unlocking hundreds of instances on the pages. It is the ultimate mathematical leverage, for sure.
Let's anchor this unbelievable ratio back directly to our exact source material just to validate this powerful linguistic life hack. The data clearly states that the core 125 words make up over 40,000 occurrences of words in the Quran. It's right there in the numbers. So this isn't just some fun theory, it is a structural reality of the text itself. By simply focusing your energy on this specific, highly concentrated core, you totally bypass the overwhelming noise of those thousands of rare words that might only appear once or twice in the entire volume. But of course, 125 words, while incredibly frequent, won't give you the whole picture. They give you the foundation. So the natural question becomes, what happens if we move further down the funnel? What's the impact of moving just slightly beyond that initial 125-word core? If a tiny handful of words does that much heavy lifting, what does the next logical step look like for a dedicated learner who wants to truly grasp the majority of the text?
Well, this brings us to our second master key, the 300 to 600 word tier. Now, I want to frame this for you not as some intimidating leap, but as a hyper-concentrated and entirely achievable goal. We're still talking about a very small vocabulary list here. Even at the high end of 600 words, that's a fraction of what a typical first-year language student is expected to memorize. Yet, the return on investment for mastering this specific tier of words is absolutely extraordinary.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how visually dominant this small vocabulary tier becomes. The vast, overwhelming majority, a full 85%, is completely covered by just those 300 to 600 words. The remaining unknown text shrinks down to a mere 15%. It aggressively demonstrates how a very small, targeted vocabulary covers the vast majority of the whole shebang. Just imagine reading a dense page and instantly recognizing 8.5 out of every 10 words. You're no longer deciphering at that point. You're actually reading. You have context. You have comprehension.
Let's look exactly at what the source data tells us. It reads that the core 300 to 600 words cover about 85% of the entire Quranic text. The sheer efficiency of hitting 85% comprehension with such a limited number of words is simply astounding. To put that into perspective, it means that the vast, intimidating ocean of text is mostly made up of the exact same drops of water. By securing this slightly expanded core, you've effectively conquered the text structurally. That remaining 15%? Those are the rare, specific words that you can easily pick up in context, precisely because you already understand the 85% surrounding them.
So, the crucial point is when we put both tiers side by side, the ultimate cheat code is revealed. In Tier 1, a microscopic input of 125 words yields this explosive output of over 40,000 occurrences. It's your immediate foothold. Then, moving to Tier 2, by simply expanding your knowledge to between 300 and 600 words, you capture approximately 85% of the entire text. Seeing these together cements the overarching narrative of scale and leverage for us. You don't conquer this text by attacking it broadly. You conquer it by attacking it strategically.
Let's move to and see how this builds a clear roadmap for you. First, massive texts are highly concentrated, so don't let the page count fool you. Second, just 125 words do the absolute heavy lifting, appearing over 40,000 times. Third, graduating to just 300 to 600 words provides a massive 85% coverage of the text. And finally, all this unlocks extreme learning efficiency. This concentration empowers you to approach what was once an intimidating, seemingly impossible text with a surgical, highly effective strategy. You're working smarter, relying on the mathematical reality of the vocabulary.
Which leaves us with one final undeniable thought. We've basically replaced that overwhelming mountain with a clear, achievable staircase. The data proves that the barrier to entry is incredibly low, and the mathematical leverage is heavily in your favor. If a mere 600 words can unlock 85% of such a monumental text, what's stopping you from starting today?